Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Hawks Latest, your number one source for news, updates, rumors, opinions, and you guessed it, the latest and the greatest regarding the Atlanta Hawks. I'm your host, Zach Langley, aka Langley ATL. Today, we've got a full slate of updates to break down for you. This is the 150th episode of Hawks Latest presented by FanArt, so hopefully you guys have been enjoying the ride. We are officially at 150 videos, so that is definitely a major achievement. So thank you guys for just sticking in there with me and just hanging in there and continuing to support the channel. I mean, it goes a super long way. All of you that tune in and hit that like button. And then, yeah, before this video gets started, if you guys could go ahead, if you're not subscribed already, or if you haven't liked the video yet, if you could go ahead and do that, I would appreciate it a whole lot. But yeah, we have a whole lot to break down today. There's a lot going on with the Hawks in the coming days, also, looking long term, and also just some stuff that has happened in recent days that we haven't broken down yet because it's been a couple days since we have put out a video. So from a controversial ending against the Chicago Bulls that has now been officially acknowledged as incorrect. I know we all remember that loss to the Chicago Bulls the other day, and it wasn't just the first loss to the Bulls, it was the second loss to the Bulls on a stretch of games where they played the Bulls twice, and so we got some clarity there, although it doesn't really change the outcome. But the play at the end of it, at the very end of the game, that basically won it for Chicago. It should never have happened, and I'm sure you all know, but if you haven't, we're gonna break all of that down. Also, in the second segment of today's episode, we're going to talk about the Hawks' outlook in the 2026 NBA draft. There was a mock draft that was put out recently, and I think it's very interesting. And there's a specific player who the Hawks, should be eyeing with their first pick, whether that's from the Pelicans or the Bucks. And there's some other protections on that, but regardless, the Hawks will have a first round pick, and there is a player that has been kind of rising up the draft boards recently and really, just kind of making his presence felt, like in terms of the main prospects for the 2026 NBA draft. So we, of course, got to break that down. In the third segment of today's episode, we're going to talk about some trade rumors. This is a very intriguing one. This is one that I know that y'all are going to definitely have some opinions about. So when I'm talking about it in a little bit, I expect you guys to let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. But there are some familiar names to Hawks fans because the Hawks played the Bulls just the other day. They played them twice in the span of 2 games, and so a few of their players the Hawks are being linked to in terms of the trade market. So we've got to talk about that. And then at the very last segment of today's episode, we have a crucial upcoming matchup tonight against the Miami Heat. It's going to be a fun one. We are back in action tonight, so we've got to talk all about what should unfold with that game. So without further ado, let's waste no more time and go ahead and start with the most talked about moment from the Hawks' latest loss to the Chicago Bulls. It was a game that was an extremely frustrating one. I mean, if you lose to any team in the span twice in the span of 2 games, it's extremely frustrating. It's something that really damages morale because it kind of makes you look in the mirror and kind of face reality of who you are as a team. And the Hawks have had to do this after losing to the Chicago Bulls twice in a row. One of those teams that just in previous years, really just recent years in general, like just has had the Hawks number. There's a very select few teams that have had the Hawks number, but it kind of seems like the Bulls are one of those teams. Although like every now and then the Hawks will get like a nice comeback win against the Bulls. For some reason, like one team is always up pretty big in a Hawks Bulls game, and then sometimes that team just doesn't win. I don't know. I don't know if that's just the Hawks and Bulls right now or really just the NBA in general. But yeah, it seems like every single Hawks Bulls game just follows a very similar script. And the 2 games that the Hawks played against the Bulls and previously, like just 2 games ago, like that stretch of game, that specific stretch of games, it felt very similar. Both games, kind of followed a similar script, especially when it got late in the game. And speaking of late in the game, the Hawks were very much in control. Like this was not a thing where the Hawks were up most of that game, really almost the entire game. And so the fact that they lost is really bad, and it really did some damage to the morale, not just for the team but of the fan base. Because against any team, if you're controlling, almost like 3.5 full quarters, 3.5 quarters, and then do you just completely unravel in the final minutes? It's going to do some damage, and this is what happened in the game against the Bulls. And on the final play that the Chicago Bulls had, Zach Langley, who was actually having a pretty solid game. It's been an interesting season for Ricochet, but I feel like he was pretty effective in that game just a couple nights ago. He was defending Kobe White, and in real time, it appeared that Ricochet made marginal contact, if any, and White kind of exaggerated the interaction, and he sold the contact. Really fell to the floor in an effort to draw a foul, and so he got that foul. And now, even in the replay, like, you saw it, like, in real time, it looked like it was, just kind of like a flop, but it looked like Ricochet made a little bit of contact. After reviewing the play, well, they didn't review the play, but after fans and analysts and everyone above, got to look at the play and see what actually happened. Kobe White completely flopped. He started falling before Ricochet ever made any sort of contact on him. But in this game, and the referees whistled Ricochet for the foul, sending White to the free throw line. And at the time, it felt seriously questionable. On replay, it looked even worse. And now the NBA has confirmed what many Hawks fans believed all along. In the league's official L2M report, which is the last 2-minute report that they do after games for whatever reason, even though it just doesn't change the outcomes of any sort of game, they still put out these L2Ms. But in this one, officials acknowledged that the call was incorrect, and that Kobe White should not have been going to the line to shoot any free throws. So you can make a legitimate argument that the refs robbed Atlanta of a win. The correct ruling, according to the report, should have been that Kobe White fell to the ground without interference from Ricochet. But in this game, like I said, it didn't change the outcome or anything. It makes it sting much, much more. And yeah, in this game, it was unfortunate for Atlanta because the Hawks did not have a single timeout remaining. And you know what that means? They did not have a challenge. Quinn Snyder did not have a singular challenge to use. And in this moment, this would have 1,000,000% been an opportunity to use a challenge and let it completely change the projected outcome of the game, because then Chicago would have the ball with like a second left and they probably would have heaved something up that probably would not have gone in, and we would have gone to overtime, and who knows who would have won once they got into the overtime period. Now the Bulls were definitely gaining some momentum, so I wouldn't be surprised if the Bulls still won that game if it went to OT, but the fact that the Hawks were robbed of a chance to even do that is ridiculous. And it was frustrating because Ricochet had a great game up until that point. In the fan base, I haven't really been seeing that here, like in this comment section, but like on Twitter and everything, and just all other social media platforms, everyone was going at Zachary Ricochet, just talking about, oh, this is why Quinn Snyder doesn't close with him. This is why he's not on the floor late in games. This is why he only plays like 25 minutes a night. And just going at him. But he had a good game. Atlanta wouldn't have even been in any sort of position to potentially win if it wasn't for Ricochet's contributions, that is. He was very effective from deep. He was playing with a level of confidence and aggression that I haven't seen from him in a long time. And he even got a technical foul in the game because he was playing with a level of edge that we haven't seen from him in quite some time. So I can't put any sort of blame on Ricochet for this. And now it's even more frustrating seeing that call was incorrect, because the fan base, like, that was a lot of the fan base's final straw for Ricochet, which it's completely unfair to him. And yeah, Atlanta lost, and the reality is that it was simply the final blow on what was already a disappointing, unraveling night, because for much of the game the Hawks were in control. They actually built a lead in that game of nearly 20 points. They scored efficiently, and they appeared poised to kind of snap their losing streak, but once again, just the second half told a very different story. This has been a legitimate theme for the Atlanta Hawks all season, just the defensive collapses in the second half. In the fourth quarter, Atlanta allowed Chicago to go on that decisive run. They just got outscored badly as defensive breakdowns piled up. Josh Giddey had an incredible game in this one. He had 19 points, 11 rebounds, and 15 assists. The Hawks defense seriously had no answer for him. I mean, late in that game, one of the crucial Chicago buckets was Josh Giddey backing down Trae Young and just getting a super easy lay, and then walking down the court saying he's effing tiny. That was horrible. I was not happy watching that. Poor second half defense has become a recurring theme. This wasn't just an isolated incident of what happened in this previous Bulls game. It's been happening game after game, whether it's communication issues or lack of rim protection, which is a major need, or fatigue, really. I mean, the Hawks just don't have a reliable way to stop momentum when it swings against them. And, you can credit this to coaching. I've seen a lot of people going at Quinn Snyder recently and all of that, but it created a perfect perfect storm, like the blown lead and the incorrect call together. And it's one that really just kind of sums up this Hawks inconsistent start to the season so far. I mean, we're like a third of the way through, and yeah, we're under 500. Definitely not where we wanted to be. And I know I probably spent longer on that first segment than y'all wanted, but there are just so many frustrations with the team right now. But as we progress into the episode, we've got some more positive stuff to talk about. We got some interesting stuff, some trade stuff. So definitely be sure to continue to be tuned in, because we're gonna go ahead and move on right now. Completely getting away from the Hawks' struggles on the floor to a topic that is very interesting, and it's not one that we're focusing a lot on right now because as I've said previously, we are in the midst of the season. There's so many other storylines to keep track of, so you don't want to pay attention to the NBA draft too much. However, we have a pick that we have been tracking on this channel for quite some time, and it's relevant now. Even the Pelicans are starting to win a little bit. The Bucks are losing, and so Atlanta's odds to gain a top pick in the draft remain very encouraging. And the draft is obviously a very, very long time away, but it's never too early to start evaluating prospects. And so there was a recent mock draft that came out that I found extremely interesting, just in terms of who the Atlanta Hawks would be getting. So, the front office is keeping an eye, while they're keeping an eye on, on-court product and everything revolving around that. The thing that is also just as important is, evaluating prospects for the 2026 NBA draft. So in the latest mock draft from Bleacher Report's Jonathan Wasserman, and we've broken down some of his mock drafts before. In this one, the most recent one, Atlanta comes away with two very, very intriguing prospects. They have them selecting Caleb Wilson, the forward out of North Carolina, with the 4th overall pick, and then with the 16th overall pick, which is that swap, they're selecting Braylon Mullins, a shooting guard out of UConn. And so two very intriguing prospects, especially Caleb Wilson, who has had a remarkable stretch. Let's start with him. So Wilson is a 6'10", 215-pound power forward, and I say power forward, but his versatility is probably his strongest asset. Definitely not locked into any sort of position, although he does play more like a big, and so you can argue that he's probably a little undersized for like a center, and so he wouldn't be a center, but a power forward is kind of a safe bet right now. But yeah, like he can defend multiple positions. He has elite athletic tools. I mean, he's probably the best athlete in college basketball right now. He just has an absolutely relentless motor. I mean, this is a guy who's just never going to stop working, whether that's down low, whether that's defending on the outside. I mean, his game is really built mostly around his quickness and his bounce and his effort, right? All of the intangibles that you get out of someone who is described as like a high motor guy, as we said. All of those as well, like are traits that translate well in today's NBA. Whether he capitalizes on any sort of lack of physicality down low. I mean, he's going to out hustle pretty much everyone on the court, and you know what the Hawks could kind of use right now? Some more physicality, some better rebounding, some better aggressiveness, because that has been something they've seriously lacked all season. And while they can't add a guy like Caleb Wilson this season, he could be a guy who just kind of fits into the culture that they're attempting to build, and the next year could be a very, very high impact rookie. In this mock draft, it has Atlanta landing him at 4, which is that's where he's projected to go really in all of these mock drafts, because the 1, 2, 3 is obviously the Peterson, Boozer, and Debonsa. It's probably going to be Debonsa at 1 because he's been remarkable, but regardless, like that top 3 is so stacked that Wilson at 4 seems like a pretty safe bet. So if that Pelicans pick isn't in the top 3, I'm still not going to be too upset, because a guy like Wilson, like getting the opportunity to land a guy like Wilson is very important. It's a very it's still franchise defining stuff. He actually currently leads the nation in dunks. I mean, consistently generating easy baskets and offensive rebounds. There's definitely areas for growth in his game. I mean, he is a freshman. He only has a 30.3% conversion rate on layups, and so it highlights kind of a lack of touch in traffic, but the shot making around the key and improving passing, averaging 2.5 assists per game, it shows promise. This guy's still growing. He's very, very young, such as like the rest of the prospects in this draft. And then defensively, like that's where his calling card is. That's where he's probably most effective. It offers way more upside than other elite prospects in that class. Some scouts really just believe that the 2026 draft is shaping up to have a legitimate big 4 at the top. He's not yet into the tier of the top three that we broke down on this channel several times, but he's like right on the cusp of breaking into that top three. And honestly, like when it comes down to it, like as the draft progresses, I wouldn't be surprised to see him just make another remarkable leap and maybe get into that top three. And if you pair a guy like him into Atlanta's existing young core, it would be a massive luxury, especially if the Hawks end up with a top pick while already having the foundational pieces in place. Regardless of what happens with some of the guys on our roster right now. And then not to spend too much time on Mullins, but the guy that Atlanta's projected to take at 16, Braylon Mullins, he profiles as a plug and play scorer. Like he's a guy who's impressed so far this season. He's 6'5". He thrives off movement, screens, and tough shot making. I mean, just another guy that would play well with the rest of Atlanta's core, just kind of like a gel glue guy, if you will. His comfort playing off the ball, makes him an easy fit alongside ball dominant stars. So I mean, he would be a natural fit with Jalen Johnson or even like Trae Young if they elect to continue going in the direction that they're going. And he is a very, very good shooter. He has proven to be a great shooter so far in college basketball, and that could address a need for Atlanta, because a team in today's NBA can never have enough outside shooting. So no matter where the Hawks picks ultimately land, whether that New Orleans or Milwaukee, wherever that lands, I mean, the 2026 draft really does represent a critical opportunity to reshape the Hawks that they seriously have to take advantage of. So now let's move on to some trade talk, some intriguing stuff that I felt was necessary to talk about in today's episode, because while draft planning is important, and while focusing on wins right now is very important, like the trade season has officially begun. There hasn't been a trade this season yet, but teams are allowed to start making deals. I mean, the December 15th deadline is now well past to go ahead and start making deals with some of the players that were signed this past offseason. The Hawks are with how aggressive general manager Anzi Soleil was this past offseason, the Hawks are being put into the center of every conversation that's happening right now. And so they're being linked to potential midseason trade moves. And once again, the Chicago Bulls are another one of those teams that's always in the midst of trade rumors, like always in the middle, but never actually end up doing anything. And so when you combine those two, you have potential deals with the Hawks and Bulls that are apparently, being rumored right now around league personnel. So according to Brett Siegel of Clutch Points, rival executives believe Atlanta could, explore deals involving Kobe White and Nikola Vucevic of the Chicago Bulls. And, how they would acquire them is another story, but many would assume that it would be kind of Atlanta capitalizing on Porzingis's expiring $30 million contract. That is a very valuable asset. Whether or not Porzingis plays, there are going to be teams that are going to want to get off of long-term-ish money, and they will want to take on a Porzingis for 1 year, because if Atlanta trades for any players making a lot of money, Porzingis is automatically involved because of the money he's making, and so that allows the other team to get off that money while Atlanta improves themselves as a team directly, if that makes sense. If they use Porzingis's deal in a trade, it's to add immediate help without sacrificing long-term flexibility. League personnel reportedly don't expect the Hawks to go all in as buyers, rather just kind of focus on their core right now. The plan appears to be selective upgrades that keep the books clean, especially with Dyson Daniels just getting his extension, and a lot of players locked up long term. But then you obviously have the Trae Young player option and that whole decision looming. And so if we look at White and Vucevic, I mean, White makes a lot of sense for Atlanta. I mean, he's 25 years old. He fits the timeline. He provides some half-court creation. I mean, he fills a glaring hole as a backup guard who can start at any time. If you have your two, at full strength, if you have your two backup guards being Kobe White and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I mean, that is the most elite bench unit in the league. But, then there's obviously the conversation of are White and Alexander Walker a natural fit, especially with the scoring lead that Na has taken. I don't necessarily know if that's true. I don't know if that would come to light, them being a good fit, but the potential that it has is remarkable. And Atlanta has desperately missed a backup point guard, a true backup point guard this season. Obviously something that we expected going into the year, but it has been on full display at times. And so if you look at Kobe White's numbers, he's averaging a career high 21.4 points on elite efficiency. I mean, very good stuff just kind of everything you want out of like a high-end role player, and I think he would fit very well in Atlanta, and this would be such a win now move to make. But he also kind of fits the timeline, so it's kind of a win-win for the Hawks. And Chicago's offense improves dramatically with him on the floor, so it's not like he's just like a stats guy with like low impact. He's making a legitimate impact, and the Hawks could use as many of those guys as you can get. White is also on an expiring deal, so it makes him, it gives him minimal long-term risk. And the Hawks obviously want optionality moving forward, and bringing in a guy like White would provide little risk. Nikola Vucevic, on the other hand, is a much more complicated evaluation. I don't necessarily love his fit in Atlanta right now. I haven't really ever liked Vucevic too much as a player, because like on paper he does all the little things that would probably impact winning in today's NBA. I mean, like he's a 7-footer who spaces the floor. And he rebounds well, and he can pass, like a good offensive player. But for some reason, like his offensive impact is never truly there. Like his impact metrics, like just in general on both ends of the floor, are pretty underwhelming. And at 35 years old, there's not really a ton of upside remaining. Like he would be a system fit, I guess. But I mean, he'd be more reliable than Porzingis. But you can argue whether Porzingis or Vucevic are better in the year 2025. I'd probably argue Porzingis, but Vucevic is a better rebounder, and the Hawks definitely need a better rebounder and paint presence down low. So I mean, it could be a fair trade-off, but it's just a matter of wanting to bring in a 35-year-old who has not proven to have much of an impact in his entire career. Like swapping Porzingis for Vucevic may make sense for both sides, like financially, but that wouldn't be any sort of inspiring move. Just more of like a stabilizer than a difference maker. Just kind of getting a guy who's proven to be like healthier in his career, I guess, if you even want to say that. But yeah, I like the idea of Kobe White, and so like I would be willing to potentially be in on Vucevic if it meant getting off of Porzingis' contract. So finally, let's go ahead and look ahead towards who the Atlanta Hawks have tonight, because the Hawks are back in action tonight at home against the Miami Heat. They're going to try to stop the bleeding, kind of try to get back on track a little bit, and this is going to be a game where both teams are going to be a little motivated to get back on track, because both teams have seriously struggled mightily over the last 10 games. Neither of these teams are playing any sort of inspiring ball right now, so it's going to probably be, I don't think it's going to be a bad game. Like on paper, when you say something like that, you're immediately thinking, well, this is not how I want to spend my Friday night, watching a Hawks Heat game where both teams kind of suck right now. I think it's going to be a good one. Normally, Hawks Heat games are pretty good. They're pretty intense, down to the wire. And adding context to today's game, I mean, I don't see any reason why both teams won't be trying their absolute hardest to get a victory. Over the last 10 games, both teams have only won 2 games over the span. And so it feels like a great reset opportunity for whoever can bring consistent energy. And the Hawks will have the home court advantage, although we know for whatever reason, the Hawks haven't played as well at home as they have on the road this season. It's just a very, what an odd team. And it makes it so much more interesting to cover and to produce daily videos, because there are like a lot of storylines to follow. But that has been a very, very interesting one. And so I want to know your thoughts on that. But Atlanta is going to get a defensive boost with Dyson Daniels returning tonight. He missed last game with right hip inflammation. It was a very oddly timed injury. He was out for that one game, but he's back in the lineup, so he'll be back in the starting lineup. And so Nikhil will be heading back to the bench. Obviously, the most likely situation. It's not a report. This is just kind of a guess, but there's been nothing to prove otherwise that like a guy like Daniels would go to the bench after they paid him and after his play. Not while he's not scoring the ball too well. Like his overall play has been really good this season. So I mean, he's going to remain in the starting lineup, and Miami is going to remain without Tyler Hero. So that's a huge scoring option that is not playing for the Miami Heat. I mean, he's been dealing with an injury all season. So for the Hawks, I mean, execution late in games, defensive effort, and rim protection will once again be under the microscope. I mean, against Heat culture, against the Miami Heat, like you got to be connecting on all cylinders. Regardless of their record, this is a team that is coached very well and can beat anyone in the NBA whenever they want to. It's just a matter of when they want to. And so as Trae Young continues ramping up minutes, because he played 31 minutes last game, so he's slowly breaking out of that minutes restriction, and he's probably not going to be on any sort of one tonight. Although you can't really say that because the Hawks have the Knicks at home tomorrow. So I mean, maybe Young plays on a minutes restriction tonight, and then the next night he plays on another minutes restriction. Like it's a back to back. It's really hard to guess like how much he's gonna play. Maybe he doesn't even play tomorrow against the Knicks, which would be really kind of deflating because we all want to see Trae Young versus the New York Knicks. I mean, it's one of the greatest rivalries in sports. So but as Trae continues ramping up minutes, just like in general, and Jalen Johnson, plays at an All NBA level. I mean, the question becomes simple, and especially in a game like this, an in-division game that has a lot at stake. Can the Hawks finally put together a complete 48 minutes? We're going to find out very soon. So that's going to do it for today's episode of Hawks Latest. If you enjoyed today's breakdown, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single update here on the channel. We're going to be pumping out videos every single day, keeping you guys informed on the latest and the greatest regarding the Atlanta Hawks. But let me know down below in the comments, what are your thoughts on that call in the beginning of the episode that I talked about, like Atlanta losing on that, even though it just wasn't true. I mean, what are your thoughts on the mock draft having Atlanta select Caleb Wilson? I think that's going to be a very good fit. I think that's probably one of my top targets right now, but I want to hear your thoughts on that. Also, what would your thoughts be on like bringing in a Kobe White or a Nikola Vucevic? I think Kobe White would be a pretty good fit, but I'm a little unsure about Vucevic, but maybe convince me on that down below. And also, do you think the Atlanta Hawks can get a much needed victory at home tonight against the Miami Heat? Let me know that all down below. But once again, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Zach Langley, aka Langley ATL, and I will see you guys next time.